They're rare, mysterious, and misunderstood. But if you've ever crossed paths with one, you know it's an experience you don't forget. Sigma INFJs are the paradox of personality types. Empathetic yet distant, social yet solitary, warm yet cold. They don't follow the rules of society. They quietly rewrite them. So today, we're diving into 10 everyday signs that prove you're dealing with a true Sigma INFJ. Some of these will shock you, and others might even sound a little controversial. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll either realize you've met one or that you are one. Let's dive in. All right, first on the list we've got lone wolf energy, but with depth. Unlike extroverts who thrive in crowds or alphas who command the spotlight, Sigma INFJs carry a different kind of energy, the lone wolf. They don't crave attention, they don't need validation from a group, and they don't care about fitting into social hierarchies. To them, independence is freedom, and solitude is strength. But here's what makes it fascinating. Their solitude isn't empty. A Sigma INFJ doesn't isolate to escape life, they isolate to go deeper into it. When they're alone, they're not just scrolling aimlessly or killing time. They're reflecting, creating, and analyzing the world in ways that most people never slow down enough to consider. Their inner world is rich, layered, and often more stimulating than any party or social event could ever be. This is why people often describe them as magnetic, even when they don't try to be. A Sigma INFJ doesn't chase connection, but when they do choose to connect, the experience is profound. They give you their full attention, their genuine energy, and their complete presence. One conversation with them can feel more meaningful than dozens of casual chats with others. And here's the controversial part. They're perfectly content without constant company. Many people see being alone as a weakness, as if solitude means loneliness. But for Sigma INFJs, solitude is fuel. They don't measure their worth by how many people they're surrounded by. They measure it by the depth of the connections they allow into their lives. This is why having a Sigma INFJ in your circle feels rare and powerful. You don't just know them casually, you experience them. They bring depth where others bring distraction. They bring meaning where others bring noise. The lone wolf energy of a Sigma INFJ isn't about rejecting people. It's about refusing to waste energy on shallow bonds. When they let you in, it means you matter. And that's why their connections, though few, leave an impact that lasts a lifetime. And next up, they question everything, even you. Most people avoid rocking the boat. They nod, smile, and go along just to keep the peace. But a Sigma INFJ doesn't play that game. If something doesn't make sense, they'll question it. If your values don't align with your actions, they'll notice. And if your words feel empty, they'll challenge you to back them up. This can be unsettling because society often rewards conformity. People are expected to agree, to stay polite, and to avoid hard questions. But Sigma INFJs reject shallow harmony. They don't challenge people to be difficult. They do it because they're searching for truth. Their curiosity isn't small talk. It's a test of integrity, of depth, of authenticity. Here's the twist. They don't question everyone. If a Sigma INFJ is challenging you, it's actually a sign of respect. It means they consider you worth engaging with. They don't waste their energy dissecting people they find fake or shallow. But if they sense depth in you, they'll dig. And they'll keep digging until they uncover your real beliefs and values. This is where things get controversial. To some, their questions can feel confrontational or even judgmental. But the truth is, Sigma INFJs aren't trying to tear you down. They're trying to break through the mask most people wear. They crave authenticity, and if they sense that you're hiding behind a facade, they'll push you until the real you shows up. And once you've been questioned by a Sigma INFJ, you'll notice something strange. You don't walk away feeling attacked. You walk away reflecting, reevaluating, and sometimes even realizing truths about yourself that you didn't know before. That's their power. They question not to argue, but to reveal. Not to dominate, but to understand. And in a world where so many people settle for easy answers, the Sigma INFJ's refusal to accept the surface makes them stand out as both rare and unforgettable. And thirdly, they seem calm but carry intensity. On the surface, Sigma INFJs appear calm, quiet, even reserved. They don't dominate the conversation, they don't compete for attention, and they don't feel the need to constantly fill the silence. But beneath that serene exterior, there's a storm of intensity most people never see until it suddenly breaks through. This intensity isn't loud. It's not about being aggressive or dramatic. It's the kind of energy you feel when someone is watching everything, analyzing everything, and quietly forming conclusions that others overlook. People often mistake their silence for passivity, but in reality, it's the silence of someone who's already figured out the situation while everyone else is still catching up. And when they finally do speak, that's when the room shifts. Sigma INFJs have a way of dropping truths that cut straight through the noise. While others dance around issues, they go right for the core, often saying what everyone else is too afraid to admit. Their words land with weight, because they're not random opinions. They're distilled insights, shaped by observation and reflection. Here's the controversial part. This intensity can be intimidating. Some people feel unsettled around Sigma INFJs, not because they're aggressive, but because their presence alone carries pressure. It feels like they see more than they should, like they're holding on to truths they haven't revealed yet. But to those who value honesty and depth, this calm intensity is magnetic. It's the energy of someone who doesn't waste words, someone who saves their voice for when it matters most. That's why, when a Sigma INFJ finally speaks up, people listen. They may look quiet on the outside, but make no mistake, their presence is never small. Their calm is not emptiness. Their calm is power under control. And that's what makes them unforgettable.
Fourthly, they're a walking contradiction.
Sigma INFJs are the human paradox, warm and empathetic, yet distant and private. Outspoken when truth demands it, yet reserved when words aren't worth wasting. They can be the most understanding person you've ever met, and at the same time, the hardest to truly figure out. This duality confuses people. One moment, a Sigma INFJ seems like your closest confidant, listening with deep empathy and giving you insights no one else can. The next moment, they retreat into themselves, leaving you wondering if you ever really knew them at all. It's not inconsistency, it's balance. They live at the crossroads of extremes, navigating life in a way that defies simple labels. Here's where it gets controversial. Society loves boxes. People are supposed to be predictable, introvert or extrovert, leader or follower, sensitive or logical. But Sigma INFJs reject that. They embody contradictions because they don't believe in limiting themselves to one side of the spectrum. They'll choose silence in a crowded room, but then deliver words that leave everyone speechless. They'll avoid attention, yet end up being the person others gravitate toward without even trying. This paradox is also what makes them magnetic. People are drawn to the mystery, to the sense that there's always more beneath the surface. Just when you think you've figured them out, they show you another side that makes you question everything you assumed. And that's the secret. Sigma INFJs aren't meant to be fully understood. They thrive in the in-between, in the contradictions that others try to resolve. They don't live to be defined. They live to be authentic. And authenticity, by nature, doesn't always fit into neat categories. So if a Sigma INFJ leaves you feeling intrigued, puzzled, and challenged all at once, it's not an accident. It's who they are. A walking contradiction, impossible to pin down. And that's exactly how they like it.
Fifthly, they're selectively social. Here's the truth about Sigma INFJs. They don't hate people, but they have zero tolerance for fake energy. While most people will tolerate small talk, group drama, or shallow friendships just to stay social, Sigma INFJs won't. To them, spending time on surface-level connections is like eating empty calories. It fills the moment, but it leaves the soul starving. This is why they often skip parties, decline invites, or even ignore group chats. It's not that they can't handle being around people, it's that they refuse to dilute their energy on interactions that don't feel authentic. Their time and attention are sacred, and they'll only share it with those who can meet them on a deeper level. And when you do get them to engage, you'll notice immediately that the vibe is different. A Sigma INFJ doesn't waste time on gossip or shallow banter. They want to know what drives you, what scares you, what keeps you awake at night. They'd rather explore the depths of your mind than skim the surface of your day. That's why their conversations feel raw, real, and unforgettable. Now, here's the controversial part. This makes them look aloof, even arrogant, to people who crave constant attention. Some will say they're antisocial or standoffish, but the reality is the opposite. They care so deeply about human connection that they refuse to fake it. They're not afraid to be seen as distant if it means protecting their authenticity. This selective social energy is what makes their relationships so rare and powerful. If a Sigma INFJ chooses to let you in, you can be certain it's real. They don't collect acquaintances, they collect soul connections. And that's why being close to them feels less like friendship and more like a profound bond that changes you forever.
And 6 on the list? They're attracted to darkness. One of the most surprising things about Sigma INFJs is that they're not afraid of the shadows. In fact, they're drawn to them. While most people shy away from pain, discomfort, or taboo subjects, Sigma INFJs walk straight toward them. Not because they're negative or self-destructive, but because they believe the truth of life lives in the places most people avoid. They're the kind of person who will ask about your scars, not to judge you, but to understand you. They'll want to hear about your failures, your fears, and your heartbreaks, because to them, that's where the real story lies. Small victories and polished smiles don't reveal who you are. Struggle does. And Sigma INFJs are wired to see beauty even in brokenness. Here's the twist. This attraction to darkness isn't about seeking chaos. It's about transformation. They believe you can't truly know light until you've faced the dark. They'll dive into conversations about trauma, mortality, or the meaning of suffering, topics most people consider too heavy, because to them, those are the conversations that matter. And here's where it gets controversial. Some people misunderstand this trait and assume Sigma INFJs are pessimistic or overly serious. But the truth is the exact opposite. Their willingness to face the dark is what makes their optimism real. They don't sugarcoat life. They don't pretend pain doesn't exist. Instead, they acknowledge it fully. And that's what makes their hope, their love, and their compassion so powerful. So if you've ever felt like someone was unafraid to sit with your darkness without trying to fix it or run from it, you may have met a Sigma INFJ. They don't just see the light in people, they see the shadows too, and they accept both. That's what makes their presence so rare and so healing.
Seventhly, they disappear without warning. Ever had a friend just vanish out of nowhere? No texts, no updates, no explanation. If they were a Sigma INFJ, it wasn't personal. It was survival. Unlike most people who thrive on constant interaction and reassurance, Sigma INFJs reach a point where their social battery simply dies. When that happens, they don't make announcements, they don't negotiate, and they definitely don't ask for permission. They just vanish. Now, here's the part that confuses people. To the outside world, this looks like ghosting or rejection, but in reality, it's a coping mechanism. Sigma INFJs are extremely sensitive to emotional energy. Every conversation, every subtle shift in tone, every hidden tension is absorbed by them, often without others realizing it. Over time, this emotional load becomes too heavy and their mind demands silence. Disappearing is not a choice, it's their way of protecting their inner world from overload. This trait can feel frustrating to friends, family, or partners who suddenly feel abandoned. But here's the twist. When a Sigma INFJ retreats, they're not cutting people off. They're entering a phase of reflection, recharging their energy and processing everything they've taken in. When they finally resurface, they often return sharper, more grounded, and with insights no one else even noticed. And this is where the controversy comes in. While society glorifies constant availability, Sigma INFJs reject it. They don't measure relationships by how often you talk, but by the depth of the bond. If you're truly close to them, you'll understand that their silence isn't distance, it's renewal. If you don't, you'll probably mistake it for coldness. That's the paradox of the Sigma INFJ disappearance. It can feel like rejection on the outside, but in reality, it's the very thing that allows them to keep showing up as their authentic self. They disappear not to leave you behind, but to return as someone worth being around.
Eighthly, they read people too well. Have you ever met someone who seemed to know exactly what you were feeling before you even said a word? That's the Sigma INFJ effect. They don't just listen to what you say, they watch how you say it, the tiny shifts in your tone, the flicker of your eyes, the way your body reacts when you're uncomfortable. To most people, these details are invisible. To a Sigma INFJ, they're like a flashing neon sign. This ability is more than empathy. It's a kind of intuitive pattern recognition, built from years of observing people and piecing together human behavior. A Sigma INFJ can read between the lines in conversations and sense motives that others try to hide. They know when someone is lying, when someone is insecure, and even when someone is secretly hurting, all without a single word being spoken. But here's where it gets controversial. They don't always let you know what they see. Instead, they quietly store that knowledge, observing and waiting. To others, it can feel unsettling, like they're standing in front of someone who has access to their private thoughts. And sometimes, it's true. A Sigma INFJ often understands people better than they understand themselves. This power can be a blessing or a curse. On one hand, it makes them incredible friends, partners, and leaders because they instinctively know how to comfort and guide others. On the other hand, it can make people feel exposed, vulnerable, or even defensive around them. After all, not everyone wants to be seen so deeply. The truth is, Sigma INFJs don't use this ability to manipulate. They use it to protect themselves and to form authentic connections. They value honesty, and their intuition helps them cut through the layers of pretense most people wear. That's why relationships with them feel different, raw, real, and sometimes uncomfortably honest. So, if you've ever felt like someone could see right through you, down to the parts you thought were hidden, you may have just met a true Sigma INFJ. They don't just read people, they decode them.
Ninthly, they can be ruthlessly independent. Here's something people often don't see coming. Sigma INFJs can love deeply, but when it comes to their independence, they are absolutely ruthless. They give their time, their energy, and their heart to the people they care about. But the moment someone tries to control them, manipulate them, or box them in, it's over. And when a Sigma INFJ decides it's over, it's final. This is what makes them so different. Many people tolerate toxic behaviors just to preserve relationships. They compromise their freedom for the illusion of connection. But Sigma INFJs refuse. They value authenticity more than approval, and they will walk away from anyone who threatens their sense of self. No warning, no long explanation, no drama. Just distance. And here's the controversial part. This feels cold to the people left behind. One day they felt close, the next day they were cut off completely. To outsiders, it looks heartless. But in reality, it's an act of self-protection. Sigma INFJs know that once they allow manipulation or domination, they lose themselves. And losing themselves is the one thing they'll never accept. This independence is also what makes their love so unique. If they choose to stay in your life, it's not out of obligation. It's because they want to. Every moment you share with them is genuine because they don't depend on you to feel whole. They're whole already. That's why their connections are so powerful. They're built on choice, not necessity. So if a Sigma INFJ keeps you close, it's because you've earned a place in their fiercely protected world. But if you ever try to cage them, don't be surprised when they disappear without looking back. Their independence isn't just a trait, it's their lifeline.
Last but not least, the secret weapon, silent influence. Sigma INFJs don't chase power, but somehow, power finds them. They're not the loudest in the room. They're not the ones fighting for the spotlight, and they're certainly not trying to prove themselves. Yet, people often end up watching them, respecting them, and even following their lead, without ever realizing how it happened. Their influence is quiet but undeniable. Unlike alphas who dominate with authority or charm, Sigma INFJs lead by example. They live authentically, they stay true to their values, and they refuse to bend to social pressure. This consistency makes people trust them, sometimes more than the people who are actually in charge. And here's the kicker: they don't even try. Their authenticity does the work for them. The controversial part is that many underestimate them at first. Because they're reserved, because they don't demand attention, others assume they're background characters. But that assumption doesn't last long. Their presence has a gravity to it, pulling people in slowly, until suddenly they're the one everyone looks to for clarity, advice, or direction. And the real secret weapon? They influence without controlling. They don't push, they don't manipulate, and they don't seek validation. Instead, they create a space where people feel safe to be real, and that authenticity becomes contagious. By being true to themselves, they unconsciously give others permission to do the same. This is what makes a Sigma INFJ's presence unforgettable. They don't need to raise their voice to change the atmosphere. They don't need a title to lead. Their silent influence is more powerful than authority because it comes from within, not from a position. So if you've ever found yourself inspired, challenged, or quietly transformed just by being around someone, you may have crossed paths with a Sigma INFJ. They don't demand your loyalty. They earn it, silently, and without even trying. So, now that you've seen the signs, have you ever met a true Sigma INFJ?